All right, so suppose a 15-year-old girl is having sex with her 16 or 17-year-old boyfriend. How you think we should deal with that? If we follow the law, the boyfriend could be charged, and some of them have been. Now, what about if you have two 15-year-olds having sex? Should we charge them, both of them, or just the boy? And really and truly, is this really the best way to deal with this particular issue when children or youngsters are having sex? What is this close in age exemption that we're talking about in the legislation? All of that we're talking about on this edition of All Angles. I'm Dion Jackson Miller. Thanks so much for being here. My guest in studio with me, we have the children's advocate, Dan Gordon Harrison. We have President of the Jamaica Association of Social Workers, Jacqueline Bryan. We have Policy Research and Advocacy Manager at Jamaicans for Justice, Jade Williams. Attorney at Law and here the Children's Cry spokesperson, Priscilla Doheny. Later in the program, we'll be talking to Attorney at Law, Kemoy McEachron. First, so production assistant Kemon White has this overview.
The close-in age discussion is really a discussion about children having sex with children. Jamaica's 2009 Sexual Offences Act makes it a crime for a person to have sex with someone under the age of 16. It doesn't matter if we are talking about an adult having sex with someone younger than 16 years, or two 15-year-old teenagers who are boyfriend and girlfriend having sex. All of them could be charged under this law. Take this case reported by The Gleaner. A 13-year-old boy was charged with having sex with a person under 16. The young girl, who was 14, gave a statement that the boy was her boyfriend and that the sex was consensual. The 13-year-old boy was charged and prosecuted. However, the 14-year-old girl wasn't charged. The issue has come up for discussion again because of the current situation facing the courts. There are 1,034 cases listed for the current Hillary term of the Home Circuit Court that started last week. 363, or 1 in 3 of those, are sexual offenses, and 42% of those sexual offense cases, nearly half of them, are for people having sex with someone under the age of 16. The question is whether cases of children willingly having sex with other children should be among the ones before the criminal courts. The close-in age proposal is to amend the Sexual Offences Act to decriminalize sex between youngsters in certain circumstances. Kemon White for All Angles.
Okay, thank you so much, Kemon. So just before I start, let me just get a couple of ages clear, all right? So the age of 12 is what we call in Jamaica the age of criminal responsibility, right? Meaning that if you're 11 or lower, you can't be charged with any kind of crime, including this one. If you are 16, that is what our law says is the age at which you can legally consent to having sex, and then 18 is the age at which you're legally an adult. So whole heap to bear in mind as we have this discussion. Great to have you all in studio. And Children's Advocate, let me start with you by perhaps laying it out, because Kemon gave an example of a Gleaner report in that story, but give us another example that you know of, for instance, which shows why this is an important issue for us to talk about.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Dion. Good evening to you and fellow panelists. As I looked at this story, I thought how lovely would it have been if we had a further breakdown of the 42%, because to my mind, and this is the essence of my proposal, we need to further dissect those sex with a person under 16. And where there is an abusive, some form of exploitation or any predatory behavior, whether you are older than or close in age, then the criminal process will apply. So we're not exempting those. But let us look at those, what I like to call the puppy love, where in a relationship, it is the girl sometimes who tempts the boy. I mean, we have seen those cases where it is the female who is the provocative one and virtually entices the boy. And as the report says, it is the boy who is criminalized and goes through the whole traumatic process of facing the court. We have seen as well that the natural progression of a lot of those cases, Dion, is that they don't end in the way that persons who are concerned about my proposal think, which is the boys are sent to prison and they're criminalized, because what happens is we engage the resources of the state. Police officers have to record statements, do the whole medical examination, forensics, and so on, and engage the long arm of the law. Then the file gets to the DPP's office. Prosecutors are drafting indictments, looking at cases. The girl is missing school as well because she has to come to court. The boy is missing school. And then a year or two in, after being on the mention list, the girl says, you know what, he was actually my boyfriend. I'm not giving the evidence. And so the matter gets thrown out. So we're saying preserve the resources of the state for predatory and exploitative and abusive acts, and deal with the situation with youngsters who are in a relationship having sex, but not before the court, because the court is not a social worker, the court is not a psychologist, and the court doesn't deal with sexual and reproductive health and how children ought to be making responsible decisions. And so our view is that when you just warehouse these matters before the court, the actual corrective behavior which you seek is not being realized because the processes of the court can't do that properly. And also we're having a challenge whereby we are traumatizing both the girl and the boy and not giving them the psychosocial support to change the behavior, which is where I think we need to be focused.
All right, whole heap in there, but Mr. Haney, let me come to you first. We're nearly at the break, but your group says it doesn't agree with changing the law so that we do not criminalize children having sex with children. Tell me why.
Well, correctly stated is that what we are really speaking about is that we believe that a mixed approach would be relevant and applicable in the circumstances, meaning that don't have to decriminalize the sexual offenses, but what you can do, create a merger or a balance whereby the social intervention mechanisms as well as divine intervention is also necessary. So we're not necessarily telling you that we don't believe that social intervention strategies can be employed, but more so balance it. Allow the law to still take its course, because we are looking at a deterrent. We're looking at it from a deterrent standpoint, where the law should be used as deterring participants or youths to participate in sexual offenses or sexual acts under the age of 16, while at the same time still apply intervention strategies so they can be brought before the court. And at the end of the day, the law may have it in place to mandate them to do counseling, to do community service, and even to go to church, because we are seeing that there's a moral breakdown in our society. So we are looking at it from that aspect. Balance it, use the law, as well as social intervention strategies.
Why the emphasis on maintaining the issue with the law? You say the law needs to be used as a deterrent. But again, if we're talking about young people, to use the ages we've been talking about, 14, 15, 16, I mean, is Supreme Court these cases enough?
Very well, but at the same time, Dion, what we note is that as a Christian society, and we have always acknowledged that children cannot consent. So why not?
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Always acknowledge what?
Children cannot consent. Under the age of 16, you cannot consent to sexual activities and exploitation or exploration. So why now is it that we are going to facilitate or allow? Because decriminalizing can be misunderstood to being that it's legalizing them, allowing them to go ahead, open the floodgates and do this.
Hold that thought for me. Lots to talk about. We're at our first break. Let's take our break and we'll soon come back.